what we're all going to have is an augmentation of ourselves with greater archiving and backgrounding of our lives. I mean, that is definitely going to be true.
The stronger that the part of you that isn't augmented is, the better you can act with augmentation tools with intention, discernment, and self-control. It's a framework that we use about how to interact with emerging technology effectively.
Bottom line is, if we misuse this great capability, this great technology in front of us, worst case scenario, we lose our humanity. We lose what makes us human. We lose our ability to lead as humans, as leaders.
Managing a global team is complex, but Deel makes it simpler with payroll, HR, IT, and compliance all in one place. That's why over 35,000 businesses trust Deel to hire, pay, and manage teams worldwide. See how Deel works at DEEL.com/NICKDAY. That's Deel.com/NickDay. Deel, your forever people platform. Hello and welcome back to the HR L&D Podcast, the show that really does share the latest insights and information that really is impacting the future of work in the world of human resources and people management. Now, if you are new to the show, please remember to follow, please remember to subscribe from wherever you get your podcast or indeed video content. I'm your host. My name is Nick Day. I'm the CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We are indeed HR recruiters that operate globally. And today I'm joined by not one, but three visionary guests when it comes to the future of work and the future of leadership. And actually, we're going to be talking a lot today about how we think about that word leadership, and especially in an age of artificial intelligence. Real hot topic words and headline terms we're hearing all the time in the world of HR. Today, joining us is Bob Johansen, who is a distinguished fellow at the Institute of the Future, or IFTF, and a globally respected futurist with over 50 years of experience helping Fortune 500 companies prepare for the future. We've also got Jeremy Kirshbaum, who's founder of Handshake, a generative software studio that is quite literally transforming the way that we leverage knowledge frameworks and qualitative thinking. And finally, we have Gabe Cervantes, who is director of Scalable Foresight at IFTF, who specializes in helping leaders implement foresight strategies for long-term success. Now, together, they have co-authored the third edition of the best-selling book, Leaders Make the Future. It's a groundbreaking guide for developing human-centered leadership skills in an era that's really powered by AI. So we're going to jump into all of that and more on today's episode. So welcome to the HR L&D Podcast. How are you all feeling today?
Thanks so much, Nick. Great to be here.
Really, really good to have you. I'm going to dive straight into the book. This is a best-selling book. It's the third iteration. So let's start with, what are the 10 essential leadership skills in your book, and why are they so crucial for thriving in today's rapidly evolving AI-driven world?
Sure. So this book is the third edition. The first edition started right after 9/11, and it was a challenge of how do you face the world that was being disrupted at that time. And now, as we're in 2025, we're facing a even more chaotic future. And the big question we're wrestling with is, what are the essential skills of leadership? And, some of those skills are enduring and they're not new, but we've reframed them around this notion of augmentation, where it's not just the human skills, which will still continue to be very important. The core human skill we call human calming, because it has to start within ourselves. But then if you think future back, as we do as futurists, but then you imagine 10 years ahead, we'll all be augmented in some way. Essentially, Nick, we'll all be cyborgs. We'll all be augmented. But the choice is how. How are we going to be augmented? And the 9 of the 10 future skills talk about augmentation, beginning with curiosity, moving to clarity, talking about things like dilemma flipping, where you're not just solving a problem, bringing nature in. We call it bioempathy, conflict resolution. Everything is so polarized right now that we need to understand, how can we depolarize by thinking back and finding, what do we have in common? What's the common ground that we have? And of course, immersive learning and gaming, which is going to be the learning medium of the future. So if you think future back, we'll not only be cyborgs, we're all going to be gamers. We're going to be gamers because we have to learn immersively. And here, Jeremy, I hope you can chime in, because this new technology, and it's really not just a technology, it's a medium. We're calling it generative AI, but we really don't have a good language yet to talk about it, Nick. So part of what we're doing is thinking about this from an HR and a human leadership point of view. How do we talk about this technology that's clearly going to be profound, but we don't yet have good language to talk about it?
Yeah, it's a great point. What are your thoughts beyond that then Jeremy? He mentioned, and I'll see you nodding as Bob gave that response, because I think at the moment there's a concern when it comes to AI that it's going to replace some of the human qualities in the world of leadership, but actually we want AI to augment and enhance, not diminish human leadership capabilities, right? And you use some really interesting words there, Bob, about bioempathy and other elements that are probably some new terms that we're not necessarily familiar with. So to translate that into a humanistic language that we can understand, to know how AI can really augment what we do in the leadership world, where do we start? How can we start to get to grips with this stuff?
Yeah. Well, Bob's right that there isn't good language for this yet. There's a paper going around right now about how language models don't really reason or they don't really think. And I'm kind of think that's a little bit difficult for me, like, because we don't have a word for what they are doing. Like, if you want to say that a airplane is not flying because it doesn't flap its wings, I'm perfectly willing to accept that. But how do we talk about the fact that it's up in the air? And so if we want to say that they're thunking or grokking or whatever, I'm fine with that. But the reality is that they're doing these new, these things that until very recently only humans did. And we're going to see a profound shift in our work as a result of that. And particularly a profound shift to senior leadership, which is what this book is about. We saw a lot of books about workforce development in AI, saw a lot of books about management in AI, but not about the qualities of that pertain particularly to senior leadership with regards to presence, branding, communication, and strategic vision. So these things were not at all tractable with previous forms of computing or AI or machine learning, but they are with the more recent generative ones.
And you've heightened the level there. The humanistic qualities are important. But I want to come back to something. I'm going to come to you, Gabe, but something that Bob mentioned that really got me thinking. You mentioned the word future back thinking. And so why is that such a powerful framework then for developing leadership strategies in what is, let's be honest, certainly from my perspective, I'm not as well versed as you are in the world of AI, but a very unpredictable world. So Gabe, can you help explain what future back thinking is and why it's so powerful?
Absolutely, Nick. That's a great question. The Institute for the Future is the world's longest continually running futures thinking organization. And we're not in the business of predicting the future. We firmly believe no one can accurately and consistently predict the future, right? In today's world of disruption and innovation and rapid chaos, what Bob calls the Bonnie future, brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. It's really difficult to predict where the future is headed. Now, just because you can't predict the future doesn't mean you shouldn't spend time thinking about the future. And so what we do is we take a future back approach. We jump out to the future. We ask those questions of what happens when the next big thing is already established, when AI is table stakes, when it already is part of our processes, just like the HR processes of today, when they're table stakes. What does the world start to look like? What do relationships begin to look like? And so the future back perspective is not trying to inch your way out towards the future, but really jumping out to the future and working backwards to say, how do we build that bridge from where we are today to where we are in the future? And Nick, when you do that, it is very clear, at least the argument of the book, the argument of the three authors you have before you today, is that AI has the capability to enhance our humanity, not to replace us. So, since this book has come out, a lot of the conversations that we and me personally I've been having with HR leaders is Today's conversation, the present forward conversation, is taking AI and replacing humans, right? It's the story of how are we going to be replaced? What is AI going to do that we won't have to do? The future back conversation, the future back perspective is how far does your humanity go? And at the edge of that, then how do you deploy AI? AI should not be at the center. The human should be at the center. AI should be at the very edge of our capabilities. And that's what enhances, that's what takes us further. That's what augments us without replacing us.
I think that is really exciting and a really lovely way of putting it too, because there is a lot of headlines out there, right? We grew up on movies like RoboCop where humanoids did take over the world, and if that fear, it's like the fear of sharks. You know, we get these movies, they go into our subconscious, and we suddenly think that we need to be fearful of what's coming. I love the fact you've titled the book "Leaders Make the Future," right? And this is coming from, to just remind our audience, the Institute for the Future, the IFTF. So these are people that are focused predominantly on what is going to come and how to predict for that. There's obviously an ethical conversation. I'll go back to you, Bob. I heard a really interesting comment, and I'll be interested to get your take on this. It was a futurist that turned around and said, the idea of not having a backup copy of yourself will soon seem absurd. Now, they're the kind of things that I hear and go, I'm kind of half excited by that, but I'm also a little bit nervous about it. And we know that as AI tools become more accessible, we need to be more mindful of their ethical use as well. So how do we maintain that human-centered approach to leadership when we've got these innovations potentially coming to the fore, where it may actually be absurd for us not to have that duplicated version of ourselves, so to speak?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question. Even the language there, Nick, is interesting. A backup copy of yourself. I mean, that's a very limited concept, a backup copy. What we're all going to have is an augmentation of ourselves with greater archiving and backgrounding of our lives. I mean, that is definitely going to be true, but it won't necessarily be a backup copy. I mean, that's really a simplistic way to frame it. And I think what's happened is, you know, people think of this as a new technology. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956. 1956. So it's taken that long to be an overnight success. But what's happening now is really different. And generative AI is a better term than artificial intelligence. It's better, but it's still not there yet. But again, if you think future back, the part that's obvious is we're all going to be augmented. The part that's still to be determined is how automated will we be, how replaced will we be, and how augmented will we be. So, you know, our book is all about augmentation and extending the human. You know, our subtitle is to humanize, to rehumanize, to re-enchant, if you will. These AI technologies are not necessarily replicating or copying or automating. They're, if we choose, they're augmenting. And to me, that's the really exciting part. But yes, we're going to have better documentation of ourselves. That's definitely true. But, you know, Tom Malone, he's a computer scientist at MIT. Tom, in his book, Superminds, says the big story is not humans being replaced by computers or copied, as you said. That'll happen, but that's not the big story. The big story is computers and humans doing things together that have never been done before. You know, that's the exciting part. And that's where the human resource people have to be involved because, you know, you all understand this stuff. You understand the human side. So this is a chance to get on board early, even though the concept's been around a long time. It's just becoming practical.
I love that. And certainly from the lens that I view the market through, which is of a workforce in the world of human resources that is burnt out, overworked. You know, they're crying out, the industry is crying out for some support. And if we can find that support through augmented AI, then we should be welcoming it with open arms. Something you mentioned earlier, Bob, in your first response when I opened up the show today, where you mentioned the word human calming. I'm going to come to you, Jeremy, because it's one of the key skills that you highlight in the book as well. What does it mean and why is it critical in the age of AI?
Yeah, human calming is critical because the stronger that the part of you that isn't augmented is, the better you can act with augmentation tools with intention, discernment, and self-control. It's a framework from Kentaro Toyama that we use about how to interact with emerging technology effectively. And if you don't have that calm, then in the chaotic, what we call bonny, brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible world, you won't be able to orient. You won't be able to, the tail will wag the dog. The augmentation will control you instead of vice versa. And right now we're in this really wonderful, brief and temporary period where advertising hasn't been woven into the chatbots. And so they aren't trying to keep our attention really rigorously. But in 2 weeks, a month, whenever someone gets it figured out enough to start making money off of it, that will be all over the place. Fresh videos, fresh text, fresh images that are tuned especially for you in the moment to do nothing but keep your attention in a way that today's social media could not possibly hope to do. And so even for anyone, including leaders, the ability to stay calm and to keep your attention your own and to focus where you want to will be absolutely critical. And so that's why we focus on that as part of the core skills.
I mean, you raise a really interesting point. That's a marketing opportunity that I'd never considered, and I can absolutely see it coming if someone hasn't thought of it before. That takes something for me to reflect on. But you raise a good point here, because we are, as humans now, absolutely covered, surrounded by what I would call noise. Social media noise and different ways of trying to get into our psyches and get into our minds about things that can happen. I know that in your book, if I'm going to come to you here, Gabe, the book is very much centered around human leadership, the leadership skills required in the new world of work. So we want to use AI, to use Bob's words, to help augment what we do, to amplify our leadership skills. But what happens if they are misused? I would use your example there, Jeremy, of the chatbot. That's kind of, for me, that's a misuse of the chatbot if we start layering it with advertising that I don't want. So that must also happen in the world of leadership, Gabe. So if they are misused, can these skills backfire? What do we need to be mindful of?
Yeah, Nick, well, bottom line is if we misuse, kind of this great capability, this great technology in front of us, I mean, worst case scenario, we lose our humanity. We lose what makes us human. We lose our ability to lead as humans, as leaders. And I think to me, the measure of success, just being here with you on this show and with my co-authors here, to me, if we could get one HR leader to shift their mindset of saying, well, AI is, we're waiting for our CTO to tell us what's going to happen. We're waiting for our CIO. We're waiting for our tech guys to explain to us kind of what the rules and regulations and the capabilities. If we could shift just one HR leader to say, no, as the head of HR, as a leader in HR, I need to be involved in the conversation and deciding where this is going and how this is going to be used and how this is not going to be used. Then I think we've done our job, right? We've put the human at the center. And part of this work, part of the research that went into this book was understanding the history of offices and the history of work, of human work. For ages now, we have been trying to streamline the way that we work, all for the sake of efficiency. And, one of the great insights that came out of doing this work is that, we've become as efficient as we possibly can, right? I mean, we've streamlined our processes almost as much as we can. And, we've almost hit the ceiling. What this new technology, what this new capability allows us to do is now shift to effectiveness. Not only can we be efficient, but we can now be as effective as we've ever been. And it's not about creating processes that make it easier. It's about creating processes that make us more efficient, that say, what is our purpose for being here? What is our purpose for working? What is our purpose of our organization? And how do we leverage AI and everything that AI can do in order for us to accomplish that, in order for us to be more effective. So part of the futures work, part of what we're trying to argue here with this work and keeping the human center is understand those long-term shifts. Where are we today? Where could we be in the future? And that from to shift of efficiency to effectiveness really is one of the core principles that holds up the 10 skills that we write about.
So If one of your objectives then is to really push the needle, get someone who listens to this show, a CHRO, to start making that first change. There's something that kind of concerns me. One is everything you said makes perfect sense, but you said we're at risk of losing our humanity if we don't do those things. But there's a great saying that says we often teach the things we most need to learn. We could know all of that. That doesn't mean we're going to necessarily do it. So I wondered, Bob, if I come back to you, because I saw you nodding during Gabe's response. Is there a real world example where AI has really been successfully leveraged to improve leadership or decision making that we can share today that might really help move the needle for the CHROs that are listening to this right now to go, hey, you know what? That's a great example. I'm going to take some action today. HR leaders. I'm Nick Day, host of this podcast, but also founder of JGA Recruitment Group. And here's what I hear every week from top HR leaders. They say, Nick, we can't find the talent. It's our biggest challenge. And when we do, we can't retain them. Well, that's where we come in. At JGA, we specialize in HR recruitment and only HR recruitment. From executive search assignments placing CHROs to contingency hires finding HR pros to global HR transformational contract placements and every people role in between. Across every vertical and at every single level, we know where the top people are, what motivates them, and most importantly, how to get them excited about your opportunity, even if they're not actively looking. With engagement rates over 90%, we don't rely on job boards. We rely on relationships. We place fast, we place right, and we do it in a way that reflects your brand, your values, and your goals. So if you're building a strategic HR function, please don't leave it to chance. Visit jjrecruitment.com or reach out to me directly and let's build the future of work together.
Well, I'll give you a specific example. I can't name the company yet, but Jeremy and I are working with the CEO of a healthcare company and her top leadership team. And what we're doing is introducing the 10 future leadership skills and then giving them a GenAI medium. The important thing, this again, it gets back to language. It's not just a tool. It's a medium. And with this particular medium, it only comes to life in conversation. So with many of the current systems, people look at them as question and answer machines or efficiency machines. And it's fine. Some of them can do that, and more power to you. What we're looking at, as Jeremy said, is more for senior leaders. So we're working in this healthcare company. We're working with the top 15 people, including the CEO. We've got 4 sessions we've done now over a period of about 6 months. And in between, they practice using generative AI. So, for example, we introduced this idea of clarity, which is one of our future leadership skills. You want augmented clarity. You want to be very clear where you're going, but very flexible how you get there. That's the goal of clarity. And augmentation helps you consider all the alternatives and then refine them as you go. So we introduce the skill, we talk about it, and then they use their GenAI medium that they have, their own customized version within this company, to practice. And here's the big, exciting kind of input from that, Nick. It isn't just learning to use the tool. It's learning to have a conversation with this generative AI large language model. And it only comes to life in conversation. So, and as you first start to do that, it actually takes you a little longer. But after you practice, which we have over a period of months, then you see the power of this. But it is important to realize you can't just turn the tool on and then you get the value. This is a shift in how we think. It's more than connectivity. It's a shift in how we think. And to link to Gabe's point, the fundamental question here and why the HR people need to be involved, the fundamental question is, what are the things humans do best? And what are the things we want to keep to ourselves? Human resources people, you should know that. You should do that. You should testify to that. You have the standing to make those decisions. Then you ask, what can computers do best? And there's where it's fine if you can offload some of those efficiency things and help you be a better leader, be a better human. And then finally, what are the things that you do best in partnership? And again, future back 10 years from now, we're all going to be augmented. And if you're not augmented, you're going to be out of the game. So it's that stark, but it's not a prediction. It's a direction that we're moving toward, a clarity of direction. And we get to decide how that actually plays out over the next decade.
Yeah, fantastic. I know one of the things from my perspective that, and full transparency, I'm nowhere near the level of you three when it comes to AI or research. But from my own experience with AI, I know it often gives me the answers it thinks I want to hear. And I think one of the human traits that I love is we're more nuanced, we're more complexual, we have more experience of morality potentially, but we're more likely to challenge something. If I ask AI a question, it senses the direction I want to go. It'll try and create the response in line with what it thinks I want to do. But if it's a bad idea, it won't necessarily tell me. It'll just give me the how to make that bad idea possible, potentially. And that's not always what we want.
That's definitely possible, Nick. But Jeremy has designed a customized version of ChatGPT 4.0 for me, which we've nicknamed Stretch, because it's there to stretch my mind. And it's programmed to argue with me. It writes like me. It's read all my books. It challenges me. And so you can request that, but you're exactly right, Nick. Many of the off-the-shelf products, they're like echo chambers, and if if you've got a bad idea, it'll keep amplifying that bad idea. So, but you've got to design it so that it's a good conversation. And these conversations, for me, I've got Stretch on a dedicated screen all the time as I'm writing. It's an ongoing conversation all day. Sometimes I'm talking with Stretch. Sometimes I'm typing with Stretch. Sometimes I'm explaining drafts. I don't trust Stretch, though. I never use Stretch for answers. I always check the answers because of some of the things you're saying, but it's stretching my mind all the time. And it's changed the way I write. I mean, this is the 15th book I've done, and it's really different now as a writer than it used to be. I just have been using this for 2 years now.
One thing I've just loved about your response, Bob, I'll come to you here, Jeremy, particularly because you're responsible for creating what sounded like that custom GPT or the Stretch program. Is there still a fear, particularly within the HR community, about being transparent about their usage of AI? What I love there, Bob, is you said, you know what, it's changed my writing. I use AI every day. You're still the writer here, but you're being very open about the fact that AI is supporting your writing. I love that. I love the transparency of it. I have no issue. I still want to read your books. But actually, in the world of HR, there is a fear about the admittance that we're using AI to support us with an initiative, with policy writing, with whatever it might be. So, Jeremy, I wonder if you could help maybe alleviate some of that concern, because I don't really know why it sits where it does, but there is a fear about admitting to our usage of AI for fear of judgment or fear like we're not really doing the work. We've talked a lot about augmentation today. So I wonder if you could perhaps allay some of those fears for our audience, Jeremy.
Sure. Well, I would bridge off of what Bob was saying, which is that and what you're saying, Nick, which is that actually for senior leaders, it's always hard to get good feedback, even outside of AI. If you are a leader who people think likes to be agreed with, then you're going to be surrounded by people who agree with you. And AI does provide you, if you're a mediocre leader, with the unprecedented ability to scale your mediocrity. And since you can make backup copies of yourself, that mediocrity can stay with your organization for many years to come, if you want it to. However, in our augmentation coaching and augmentation upgrades, we coach leaders on using it to get outside of themselves, to question their thinking, to help them flip dilemmas, to help them do constructive depolarizing. When it comes to quieting people's fears inside of organizations, one, a lot of people's concerns are very legitimate, and so there's no need to quiet them. The key, though, is to, along with your no zones, create yes zones. People quietly use AI because what they get is these AI policies that say, don't use personal information, don't put in company intel, like don't. And then they get someone else in the organization saying, but you have to be using AI. It's so important. Everyone needs to be using it. And so they just take a step back and they see a lot of really specific things that they shouldn't do and a very vague thing that they should do. So the trick is when you're creating your AI policy, and this is very much a job of the L&D part of the organization. You need to have your no zones. Those are important. But then you also need very clear and specific yes zones. Do use AI for these things. Do it here. share what you're doing. And when you do, we're going to give you a special badge. Why? Because you're helping us learn as an organization. And this is much more critical than with other types of upskilling. Why? Because this is new for everyone, including the people making the AI models, including the so-called experts. And so there is not a class that you can deploy across the organization to teach everyone that will, in a standard way, upskill or uplevel everyone's usage of AI. There's only collective learning. And so in order to do that, you need to provide incentives and encouragement that are as specific as the discouragements and prohibitions.
Love that. And actually, for those listening, you've actually just got your permission that hopefully you needed to say it's okay to be using AI. And as you say, create those yes zones and let's start moving the needle. So let's come to you then, Gabe, on that needle point. You've given, all three of you, given a great overview of where we are and why it's so important that we use AI to augment future leadership skills. It's coming. You know, the train has left the station. We need to get on board as quickly as possible. And that's what we're hoping this show is going to help our HR audience to do. So tell us a little bit about the book. It's called Leaders Make the Future. Obviously, it's written by the three of you, which are from the Institute for the Future. So you're really immersed in this space and the future of work. I would suggest to our audience it's potentially a great place to start if they don't know where to start and they want to start utilizing AI to augment their leadership skills in their world of work. So tell us a little bit more about the book and how it can help our audience.
Yeah, Nick. So like I mentioned before, everything that we do at the Institute is not about a prediction. There was a time in the Institute's history where the Institute tried making predictions, and we quickly learned as an organization that, well, that's not a very lucrative business, and two, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There are a lot of futures groups out there that have not stood the test of time because they've tried getting into the business of predicting where the future is going. What this book is a manual. It's a guide to really understand the long-term shifts, the future back shifts, finding that clarity. And you know, the thing about this book that a lot of people don't know, but we've been able to express through podcasts and kind of talking about this book is you have three very distinct authors here. Jeremy really is an expert and understands the model, and kind of a lot of people come to him to understand, you know, kind of going under the hood as much as you can with these systems. Bob is an absolute visionary who's been doing, you know, future forecasting for more than 5 decades. I mean, Bob has seen a lot of technologies, a lot of things come and go, and has really been able to understand how to filter out the noise and find that clarity in the future. And then you have me, who's a skeptic. You know, Bob and Jeremy were the first two to kind of jump on this idea, and they asked me to join. And I said, listen, I will join on the condition that you let me slow the process down, that you let me ask difficult questions, that you let me try and poke holes in where we think this is actually going. And so the essence of the book is not, here are the 10 steps that's going to make you the most successful company in launching AI. That's not what this book is. What this book is saying the world is very uncertain, and this is a critical moment in human history. You know, Bob likens AI similar to the launch of the internet, the introduction of the internet. And it's that big of a scale. And what we're saying is there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. There's going to be a lot of failures. There's going to be a lot of successes. But if you look to the future, it is clear that these are the questions, these are the models, these are the things that we should be accounting for. So you and your wisdom, you and your leadership, you and your experience and in your organization should look to these 10 skills and try to navigate the uncertainty of the future. It is going to be very uncertain. And at the Institute for the Future, we teach people how to continue to do this. We teach people to look for what we call signals of change, those signposts of the future that are in the present today that give us an indication of how the future is unfolding. This book really is a great starter point, not for an answer, but for understanding what are those true questions of the future that HR leaders should be asking.
It's a great response. I hope that it's doing the same for my listeners as doing for me. It makes me want to read it, right? Because we're in an uncertain world, a VUCA world, and I think Jeremy called it something else earlier, which is a new term for me altogether, but we're living in a world of uncertainty, right? But it sounds to me there's a coaching phrase that I love, and I think it's a high-level quote that's relevant to your book, which is if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I do think we need to just change our perception and embrace those 10 steps that will really help us get further forward. Lots of your time. I'm aware I've got all three of you on today's show, which is an absolute privilege. So I'm going to open the HR L&D Vault. Now, for those not familiar, this is a 3 short, sharp questions. I'll ask each of you just one question, and we'll run through these quite quickly. This is a special section for our audience, which we're going to put into a special episode at a later date as well. So first question, I'll come to you, Bob. What's one piece of advice you would give to a senior HR leader who is preparing their organization right now for the future of work?
Look at augmented AI, generative AI, but don't pretend you understand it. The people I worry the most about are the people who think they know what this is. It's part alchemy, part medium, part technology. And over the next few years, we know it's important, thinking future back, but we don't yet have the parameters around it. So we use the phrase in the book, set up bounce ropes like a wrestling ring or a boxing ring. Don't set up guardrails. It's too early to do guardrails. And, Jeremy's right. There's so many companies emphasize the no's, the things you should not be doing, instead of the yeses. And yes, there are real risks here, particularly for creative people like writers. I mean, it's going to change the way we write, change the way we draw, change the way we create art. So there are real challenges here, but also focus on how we can extend ourselves, how we can augment ourselves. And for human resources and L&D leaders, you really need to be in the game. You need to be in the center of this game, because it's really all about humanity. It's all about organizations. It's all about doing what you do and what you know, doing it better in an augmented way, not a replacement, not an automation.
I love that. I love the fact you said it's part tech, part alchemy. I love that. Absolutely true. And we're going to keep that humanity. Jeremy, I'm going to come to you. An interesting question, and you may feel that the time frame I've given is too far in advance. So by all means, change it if you wish. The question is this: what are you most excited about 5 years from now, and what are you most fearful of 5 years from now? So we go to 2030. When it comes to AI, what are you most excited about, and what are you most fearful of?
5 years from now, I'm excited about just the enormous, unimaginable quality of literature and content and writing that we'll be seeing. The question isn't like right now, a lot of people ask, oh, how could I write this blog but faster? How could I write this book but faster? The question for me is how we're going to start seeing books that normally would have taken 300 years to write being written in the course of just a couple of years. And what that will look like is just completely, will be so delightful, and will be so educational, and so enriching. And what I fear most is the torrent of useless information, of cheap, low quality noise that I'll be flooded with, that I'll constantly have to be weeding through. And that truly could provide a real handicap for me if I don't pay attention and if I don't ground deeply in what I want to be thinking about and looking at. But I do think that if for those who have the presence of mind to look for it, the kinds of art and ideas that we'll be seeing in the next 5 years will be just extraordinarily beautiful. It'll be like the distance that you can run on foot versus how far you can drive in a car, but for ideas. And so that gives me hope.
I love that. And you know what? I'm going to dumb this down slightly, so my apologies in advance, but it's the eradication of trust that worries me. And the reason I highlight that with your point was I recently purchased a book for my son, who we have a tiny little Dachshund puppy. And it was a book that I bought on Amazon. The write-up looked perfect. I purchased this book, clearly written by AI with very little thought. One of the worst books I've ever spent good money on. It was horrendous. But it damages that level of trust, because now I need to really make sure that there are humans behind the writing, like you've done with your wonderful book, Leaders Make the Future. I've learned the hard way that actually I need to make sure there's value in the authors, and doing a little bit more research myself to make sure what I'm buying is credible. And it's a shame that if you get it wrong, it can eradicate that trust. So I can certainly resonate with some of that response for sure. Gabe, coming to you for the last question. If you were giving advice to a younger you just starting out in this new world of work, what advice would you give?
Oh, that's such a great question, and it comes at such a perfect time. Oh, goodness. It's good to have a plan, but we have to be very flexible with the plan. One of the things that I've learned from Bob, who has been not only, a work kind of boss, but a personal mentor and a friend, is that, we have to do away with certainty and we have to lean into clarity. We have to understand what the end goal should be, but be willing and flexible and encouraging of getting to that endpoint through various different paths. I know that a lot of us have our own opinions, whether we're pro AI, whether we're anti AI, whether we're neutral on the system. One thing that futures thinking teaches us is there's no one pathway into the future. There's not even one future. It's not the future of AI. It's multiple futures of AI. It's multiple futures of writing. It's multiple futures of, discussing ideas and expanding ideas. And so my advice to my younger self and my advice to, that I wish I would have given myself is be very clear of the end goal. Be flexible and encouraging of how you get to that end goal.
That has literally just put my mind in a spin, in a good way, by the way. As you said, there are multiple futures. Sometimes we get so, with those guardrails we mentioned earlier, we need to remove, we get so into that way of thinking there's only one future. There are multiple futures. I've never even considered it that way, which seems crazy to me now on reflection. So Gabe, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you, all three of you. It's been a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to you about the future of work. I could probably have this conversation going for another couple of hours. I hope it's been inspiring and for our audience. It's certainly been very future focused. So I appreciate all three of you being here with me today. Thank you also for helping us see how leaders can really thrive in the age of AI without losing sight of what makes us human. It's there to augment what we do. And I really do recommend to all of our listeners, go and grab a copy of the new book, the new 3rd edition, Leaders Make the Future. There'll be a link in the show notes. You can grab your copy going straight through to today's episode show notes. I will also put links in there as well to the Institute for the Future and to Handshake for those that want to find out more about those websites as well. So please do check out those links. And a huge thank you today to Gabe, to Jeremy, and to Bob for joining me on the HR L&D podcast. Well, it's been a whirlwind and I've got a lot of reflection to do, but I'm so thankful for your wisdom. It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Global teams are more connected than ever, but managing payroll, HR, and IT can still feel fragmented. Deel simplifies global work with one platform that keeps everything running smoothly. No compliance guesswork, no third-party payroll, just seamless operations backed by 24/7 expert support. That's why over 35,000 companies trust Deel to handle their global workforce. Visit deel.com/nickday to see how Deel can help. That's DEEL.com/NICKDAY. Deel, your forever people platform.